sure is hot out here. How are you holding up, Prince?
What do you mean? This level of heat's nothing.
It's been a slow month for me. I didn't have a game lined up for March or April, and that was sort of planned, so I'd set time aside for a game I've been looking forward to. But I didn't expect it to get a demo just a month before its release. Or that the creator of the manga it's adapted from would pass in the interim. Rest in power, Toriyama-san. Sandland is an upcoming open-world action-adventure mecha game developed by Ilka Inc. They worked on that One Piece Odyssey game that came out a while back, so they must have a knack for adapting shonen manga into action-adventure games. I'm not going to get into the details of the story here, because the full game will be out by the end of April, so we can save the plot stuff until then. This video is going to touch on the demo, and what you can, and can't, do in it. As far as demos go, it's pretty straightforward, and I like that about it. The entire demo takes place in a microcosm of the titular Sandland. The desert is full of roaming mobs of various types of enemies. Some are just hostile wildlife. Some are bandits, and some are loyal soldiers of the local despot. You play as Beelzebub, the Prince of Demons, and are accompanied by Rao, a human guiding you through the Sandland, and Thief, a demon assigned to watch over you as you make your way through the desert. Rao and Thief follow your lead, but they won't do anything unless you issue commands by holding down L1 and pressing the corresponding face button. Each of them has their own special abilities they can use to help you in fights, and they operate on cooldowns. Beelzebub can hold his own in a fight against humans and a smaller wildlife. Square for light attack, circle for heavy attack. Your heavy attack changes based on how many light attacks it follows, so it's meant to cap off your punch combos. When an enemy flashes red, they'll attack. Press R2 to dodge and avoid their hits. Underneath your health is a power meter that fills up with every kill. Once it's full, you can perform special moves by holding R1 and pressing the corresponding face button.
Take that! Here we go!
Note how this mirrors the buddy wheel on the control scheme. Although you could technically fight every enemy hand to hand, you're not going to get far without some extra help. Press right on the D-pad to pull up the capsule wheel. This is where you store all the vehicles you have on hand. The demo gives you 3 vehicles to try out: the bike, the tank, and the battle armor. In general, all vehicles share the same control scheme, but each vehicle type has its own quirks and uses. You get into a vehicle by pressing the action button, triangle. You move around with left stick. Depending on the type of vehicle, you'll have to account for whether it moves around independent of where you point the camera. Like, the armor moves around as if you were on foot, but the bikes and tanks' movements are based on their position relative to the camera. Think of tank controls in old survival horror games, but you also have complete control of where the camera looks at. In general, you fire your active weapon with R2, and go into aiming mode with L2 if you want more precise shots. Pressing R1 reloads your active weapon, and pressing circle swaps out your active weapon if you have more than one. Being a mecha game, you can customize your vehicles, and your loadout affects your performance in combat and traversal. The bike is the fastest of your vehicles and meant to help you cover long distances. By default, it comes with a pair of machine guns at the front and a shotgun on the top turret. This means that your machine gun shots will only affect anyone that your bike is directly facing, but the shotgun can be freely aimed with the camera. The bike is good for hit and run sweeps, but it's not the sturdiest vehicle in a fight. That's where the tank comes in handy. Obviously, it moves slower than the bike, but it's more maneuverable in a fight and packs a stronger punch. In contrast to the bike, you can aim either weapon freely with a camera. The battle armor moves slower than the tank, but you can dash to avoid attacks and close in on enemies. It controls more like your on-foot movement, but the heavy attack depends on what kind of melee weapon you've equipped on the armor, and instead of tacking it on at the tail end of your light attack combos, you use it to deal massive damage to an enemy's health and put them in a stun state so that you can land more light attacks uninterrupted. If an enemy attacks, you can block with the armor by holding R2. How much damage you absorb is reflected on the boost meter that you would normally use to make the bike or tank drive faster. The armor also has a slot for a ranged weapon that you can use by holding L2 and fire with R2. The first time you call up a vehicle, you're treated to the capsule animation, but you can skip this on subsequent uses. Also, you don't have to leave one vehicle to call up another, as just selecting a vehicle in the capsule wheel will convert the one you're piloting into the new one. Another nice feature with vehicles is that if you're having a hard time moving while shooting, you can press up on the D-pad to have the vehicle move forward automatically while you spend time lining up your shots. Besides vehicle customization, you can also unlock skills for Beelzebub and his buddies. The demo already sets you at level 15, and gives you what I assume are the essential skills to unlock. Enemies start off unaware of your presence, but you'll see a big red exclamation mark over their heads once you're spotted. From what I've seen in trailers, and the fact that you can crouch by holding L2 while on foot, I can tell there's going to be stealth elements, but they don't seem to be fully implemented in the demo. I've been playing it on and off for the past week to get a feel for the gameplay, and I don't think there's a way to complete the demo. You're cordoned off from most zones, and the areas that look like they would be progress seem like they're impossible to cross because I don't have the vehicle that's suited for vertical movement. I think this is one of those vertical slice builds you hear from people who know what they're talking about. So to talk about my first impressions about this game, I'm gonna have to expand on some of the channel lore for a bit. Long before I'd ever consider talking about video games, I used to watch a channel on YouTube that belonged to Samtron 5000. She had a series titled Games You Don't Play, where she showcased a bunch of mostly Japanese titles that flew under the collective radar. One of those games was Steambot Chronicles, an open-world mecha game on the PS2 that's been on my wall of games I want to cover at some point. Maybe. Without getting too into the weeds about what the game was, it's a super cozy game where you do side quests in a world where everyone uses walking cars instead of regular boring cars. There was supposed to be a sequel back in the 2010s, but the project died, and it's one of those games I mourn over, along with Kojima Productions' version of Metal Gear Solid Rising. From what the trailers promise and what little I've played in the demo, this is probably the closest thing I'm gonna get to having another Steambot Chronicles. Also, it looks like it's shaping up to be a better version of Lost Planet. Something that always stuck with me about Lost Planet was that it felt like a game that didn't want to admit that it was a mecha game. Like, vital suits play a big role in the setting, but you're not expected to have one save for a few scripted encounters, which is why there are so many of them scattered about the maps. You could potentially clear every mission while on foot, and you wouldn't miss out on much as the mecha combat was inelegant. Vital suits are meant to be disposable, and there never feels like there's enough time to gain mastery over any of their mechanics, so it's hard to form any attachment to them, even if one of them belonged to your dad. Conversely, Sandland makes you dependent on your vehicles to overcome its obstacles. You could go from place to place on foot in Sandland, but what fun would that be when you've got a bike in your back pocket you can always call up and ramp over gaps? Also, there are rocks that block off underground tunnels that you can't break through unless you use your tank's cannons. Hell, I can't climb up these rock formations because I don't have the jumper bot. Besides the gameplay, I just really love how the game looks. Being a Toriyama joint, it's already just instant aesthetic. I know he's mostly known for Dragon Ball, but Toriyama always knocked it out of the park with his mecha designs, so I'm glad Sandland is out here to showcase that. I don't have much else to say about the game until it drops. I'll be back with a follow-up once that happens. Hopefully I'll have a couple more videos out in the meantime. But yeah, try out the Sandland demo and let me know what you think.